here to do a new tutorial. I think one thing that myself I couldn't find on YouTube was to make a story. You're going to have a character interact with an environment. And how do you get that environment into place? How do you connect, in some cases, the 3D space from third-party software to iClone to etc. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. Yeah. So in this case, I've got the environment in Maya. I've gone through here, and what I've done is I've actually set it up so that the 000 point is lined up to our floor. That's pretty important because we want to make sure that the character's feet are going to hit the floor. What I've set up is I've set up the ability to hide different objects because, as you'll see here in a second, you have to export in a multifaceted way for iClone to work, at least in terms of iClone 8. One by one, I'm going to go through and export as I've got it set up. So I'm just going to simply go File, Export Selection, and then I'm going to choose the FBX export, the default, export the ground, going to export this main podium. And I'm going to go through and export each of the individual things just because I want to get through this tutorial as quick as possible and not be overly repetitive. I want to show you the things that are unique. So in this particular case, I have these doors. These doors are meant to work on a pivot point. The pivot points do not work across the export. So for me to be able to do that, what I've set up is extra bits. And so let me kind of show you that here. So if I go ahead and go to this, I've got extra for the right podium, etc. So you'll see that. What I've done is I just basically make sure that everything is at the 000 part. And that way I'll be able to maintain that pivot when we go back into iClone. So what I'm actually doing is I'm doing a double export. I'm doing one export for the doors that's in position and another export for the one that's at 000. I'm going to jump into to iClone and kind of show you how that works. So let's go ahead. We've got an empty scene here, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in each thing that I have individually exported. So I'll go ahead and go File, Import, and I'm going to one by one bring in these things here. So it's going to ask me if I want to break it up. In this case, I do not because I'm trying to really have a neat scene. I'm going to go ahead and get these podiums, and then I'm going to just go ahead and skip through some of this. Pick up at this spot right here. And I think one thing you'll see from this point, the environment is pretty well organized. Again, I can hide the walls, I can hide the windows, etc. It has gotten a little bit dark in my scene file. So one thing that might be useful is this auxiliary light. You can go ahead and turn that on for just being able to see. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the doors with the pivot point. There's a different way to do this, but again, this is kind of the way that I do it. Is I'm going to go ahead and File, Import these doors. So in this case, I've got the left door. I'll go ahead and import that. I don't want to break it up. And then I'm going to go ahead and import in the right door. And it actually, in this particular case, it brings in the naming from Maya. So you'll notice that even though my name was left door FBX, right door FBRX, it actually did left door export and right door export. And that's just because that was the name from Maya. I wish it also did the pivot point, but it does not. So go ahead and bring it over, and you can kind of see what we have for the doors. And you'll notice the pivot point is at the 000, and I've done that on purpose. So now I can go ahead and just kind of move those into place. Now you'll notice you want to do that on the first keyframe. If I move it on another keyframe or another part of the timeline, it makes it a new keyframe. So good to do this on the first frame, just kind of moving that into place over there. And the F key is not like Maya's frame key, but is a front camera. Sometimes that kind of does help. But this is the reason why you bring in a kind of a reference door that doesn't have the right pivot point, because then you can go ahead and bring your new door and use that pivot point. You use one as reference. So I would hope in future versions of iClone, Reallusion, if you are listening to this, it'd be great to just kind of set it up to have that set up already where the pivot point comes in through export. Not having to bring in each individual piece would be a big time saver. So just keep on kind of getting that into a good spot. And then once you have it close enough, what you can do is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of hide these doors. I'll go ahead and just delete the other doors that were there. Go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that. And then I'll go ahead and unhide those doors. Again, just kind of put that to spot into position. I've got one of them is a little bit too. And then you can kind of see now that I've done that, I'm able to open my doors. And you'll have to play with that. One thing I didn't show in this tutorial is bringing in cameras. So I'm going to flip over to Maya. And over in Maya, I've set up multiple cameras. You just need to select the camera. You have to be looking at the particular camera when you export. I found that to work better. And go ahead and this 2090. And then flipping over to iClone, you're starting a new scene. And in this particular case, this was from an existing scene. If you go to render video, it's going to default at something like 1280 by 720. And so you're not going to know that, I think, when you first go in. So go ahead and import the camera and show you what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and import the camera. I'm going to go ahead and choose the 2090 camera. Go ahead and do that. And you can kind of see the aspect ratio is not the aspect ratio that we have over here in Maya. What I need to do is change the aspect ratio. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the render video. And the resolution that we're using is a 2K scope, which is a little bit more of a wide format for film. And when I do that, you can kind of see that should line up ideally. And now in this particular case, I do want some lights. It is pretty dim. If you are rendering in an external software, like you're rendering in Unreal Engine or Maya or C4D, etc., technically the lighting doesn't matter in iClone, but if you're animating in iClone like we are for Love is a Championship, it's great to just kind of put something in there. You go to Window and you go to Content Manager. That should open up the Content Manager for you. And go under this little stage icon right here, or stage icon on the side. You click on Atmosphere and go ahead and choose these different presets. And then normally I would say that it worked pretty good. In this particular case, I've done it before. It hasn't worked that great. So what in this particular case I would have to do is I'm going to have to just get the one that is close enough and then go ahead and adjust from there. So this is lighting with a good start. You have, if you go into would be in Window Visual Settings, there are additional settings that you can do here in terms of you can turn on, ambient occlusion to get a little bit of extra shadows. You could play with different filters to be able to get a little bit more of the exposure. Like I believe, in this case, if I wanted to, I turn up a setting just to get it a little bit brighter if I wanted to and not have to sit there and keep on turning on the lights. I think it was this IBL right here. Go ahead and turn that up. I can be able to get a little bit more lighting that way, and that might help so that I don't have to use that auxiliary light. But again, you can go ahead under the Create Lights. You can go ahead and add various point lights, etc. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I actually set it up. So in this particular case, I've actually set it up where I've got different scene lights and I've actually added extra lights. So if I go ahead and flip to the preview camera to move around, that's also your H key. What you'll actually see is, and I've hidden all of my extra lights, but I'll go ahead and unhide them here just so that you can see it. You can hide the lights without it. It'll just hide it from the viewport. It will still actually light your scene. I'll just go ahead and just kind of unhide those just so that you can kind of see them. A little weird because you can select them by dragging and then click, and then it will turn them all on at once. It's not super intuitive, but it works. Okay, so just going through and reversing out, hide some of the walls just so that you can see it. Hide the windows, etc. What you can see is I've just kind of set it up so that there's just different rows for the lights, just kind of duplicating them. That kind of worked for our particular needs. And yeah, just set up the reporter. That is basically it. Hopefully that is useful for you. It was something I couldn't find online myself, but stay tuned to the next tutorial. We're continuing to truck along here with the short film. It's really coming together. It's going to be pretty phenomenal. Thanks for your support. Talk to you soon. Bye.